Hello, everybody. It's Ben here with Cryx. I am here with the coach of Pirates in Pyjamas and Twisted Minds Orchid, Mercury. Thanks for sitting down with me. We are in the middle of the OWCS Grand Finals right now, and I got a few questions for Coach Mercury here. So, first is how did you get into coaching?
So originally I was actually a player, and I was kind of like Kappa tier 3. I do have a top 16 finish long time ago, like 5 years ago. And to be blunt, it was really impossible to work with the sexism in the scene as a player. I know that some, women gender nonconforming did not work for me. So I found it a lot easier to compete if I was in charge. So if I can make my own environment and make my own environment succeed, I'm still competing and I love it.
Does that have to do with being able to kind of choose the people that you work with or have more control over who you're working with, or is it more about the kind of power dynamics of being a coach versus being a player?
So it's definitely both. Yes, choosing who I want to work with is a big part of it because there are players that I have, we'll say like soft blacklist because of the way that they've interacted with me in the past. Obviously, everyone can change or at least can present differently regardless. It is a lot about culture building, right? As a coach, you're in charge of the culture, you're in charge of making sure everyone works together and how they work together. So being able to define the culture is a really big part of why I do it.
And so obviously you've been with Pirates in Pajamas for probably over a year, 2 years, has it been, or
Like a year, 3 months, a year and some change.
yeah? So does that and been working with the same core of Stone, Chronic, and Strider? Have kind of you've been with them for most of that time. How do you feel like you've developed? Do you feel like you've developed them as players over this really long stretch of time as a core together?
Yeah, I think in this case, a lot of the results do speak for themselves. I went from a lot of players that had either never touched Contenders or it was their first season in Contenders that they got relegated in. And I took them, we got 8th place, then we got 3rd place. And since then, the competition has skyrocketed, right, with all the OWL players filtering back in. And the fact that we're still maintained within the competition. We're not necessarily a 3rd place team anymore. I'd like to get back there. But we went from a place where they were tier 3 or borderline, and now we're competing with the real deal.
Right. And you're punching up there, obviously. Like that M80 series was really exciting. So there's a meme in at least some of the fandom that I was a bit reluctant to acknowledge at first because it didn't seem like it was empirically true, but now it seems like there's a little bit of a narrative that Pip can't win map fives. Is that something that you guys are aware of, or is that a narrative that you guys just think is just bad luck?
So it's a narrative I'm aware of. I will say a big part of that is unlucky map pool for us. It's not so much that it's nerves can't win map 5. It's the map pool has not been great for our playstyle. I do think the meta shift that's happening right now will change that.
Yeah, because Strider was pretty nasty on the Malga. I remember I think I did a whole interview with him that was kind of based around Malga, and then the Malga meta went away like a day later because they patched the game. But he's pretty nasty on that Malga. So with that core kind of Strider and Chronic and Stone, you've shuffled around the support line a bit. So what's been some of the logic behind some of those decisions, especially the ones in the past month or two, and Face It League and the end of stage 2?
Yeah, so I would say there's two main parts of it. One is when you do have a core that's been together so long, there's no point in trying to adapt the core to the player. You have to find a player that fits the core. And no one's going to fit right away. So we do have to give the player some time, see if they will fit in. And if they don't, then changes must be made. And that's not on them. That's not calling them a bad player. That's just saying that there's such a tight-knit core. If you can't conform, the synergy is not going to be there. And that's just something we've been having difficulty with support drought and all of that nonsense. Finding someone that does fit in has been difficult.
And speaking of kind of building a core, so in addition to Pip, you've been coaching Twisted Minds Orchid in the Saudi eLeague women's circuit. I wanted to ask, for people that aren't really familiar with what's been going on over there, what's sort of the talent level like? Because obviously, Twisted Minds won the whole thing, right? I think.
Yeah.
So what would you say the talent level is in that scene, kind of compared to just like other maybe like comparing to some other tournament circuits for reference.
Yeah, I would say that the talent level is at this point in time worse than like Western COF, and a big part of the reason for that is it's just a much narrower pool. They have a very similar import rule to OWCS and like EWC of only 2 players can be outside of Saudi, and so we have the Saudi population, right? Especially when like women's esports in Saudi is just beginning. There's really like it's just a really small pool of players to choose from, and therefore like I think there's 2 GM teams, maybe 3 if we're being generous, and then it goes like Masters, Diamond, Plat pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there who would you say is the best player in that whole circuit, or best 2 if you can't pick one?
I feel like it's gonna be way too hard for me to even like narrow it down, because when you're working at a level that isn't this like top professional level, you're working with players that have their own strengths and their own merits, and you're working with players where all they want is to try really hard. So when you say best player, of like my DPS have good mechanics, right? My tank is a great IGL. My supports do their job, great. They're not they're role players, which is really important for backline, right? So I'm like developing these players, and what stands out to me is that they all want it so bad. Sometimes it seems like they want it more than like the OWCS teams. Like they will come to me like crying, being like, "What if we get second?" Right? And I love them, and I don't want to knock any of them down by saying one or the other is better, because they're all putting in the same amount of effort.
That's fair.
And they're at a level where the little differences in who's better, who's worse don't matter.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for your time. And good luck with the rest of Face It League and the future competitions that you're in.